Welcome to episode 4 of season 5 of the Filmmaker Film Watcher podcast. I'm filmmaker Richard De Gregorio.
And I'm film watcher Greg Ralph.
Wow, what a time, Greg. We're going back to old Hollywood.
Well, we're going back to old Hollywood in not so old Hollywood films.
That's right.
So I'm spun out. And trust me, by the third film, I'm going to be so spun out.
Absolutely.
Which is a great segue into, hey, what films are we doing?
That's right. But the name of this episode
I was
is...
just thinking we said that.
Yeah, we haven't said that.
Then why don't you say it?
So the name of this episode is Bad Films Ain't the Only Hollywood Crime.
Ma'am.
Yeah. So the first film we're going to be discussing is 2006 Hollywoodland.
And then we'll be looking at 2019's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, my first ever Tarantino film.
Yes. And the third film we're going to be discussing is 2001's Mulholland Drive.
Can't wait.
So, Greg, why don't you kick it off with Hollywoodland?
I will. Faster than a speeding bullet. More powerful than a locomotive. Able to leap tall buildings in a single bound. Look, up in the sky! It's a bird, it's a plane, it's Superman! These were words at the heart of my 1970s childhood, along with concepts like mild-mannered and fighting a never-ending battle for truth, justice and the American way. 20 years after it was first made, the 1950s TV series Adventures of Superman was on high repeat here in Australia. I still have suitcases of DC comic books from the decades before we called them graphic novels, and in fact I've just realised we're surrounded by them, Ricardo. And the Superman logo jumper, or sweater if we are following the American way, that my mum or mom knitted for me at the end of school. And thanks again, Mum. I knew that the star George Reeves had died young. The myth at the time was that he'd taken his supermanliness too seriously and jumped out a window to fly. This 2006 movie tells a version of what actually happened. And it does this by intercutting between two time streams. The first narrative begins as we descend from the clouds, like Superman, to arrive at a crime scene, the apparent suicide of a naked George Reeves, Ben Affleck. The film then jumps back to become his biopic across the 1950s, as George tries to revive a Hollywood career after a minor success in Gone with the Wind and some B-movies. He begins an affair with Tony Mannix, Diane Lane, who is in an open marriage with studio fixer Eddie Mannix, Bob Hoskins, and as the relationship progresses, George becomes a kept man with expensive gifts, including a house. George hopes that Eddie will put in a good word for him at the studio, to no avail, and becomes frustrated at his inability to get work as an actor. Eventually, George lands the role of Clark Kent, Superman. He doesn't actually want the role, but he needs the money and the self-respect, and rationalises that no one will be watching this new medium of TV. And, of course, he's fabulously wrong. George becomes recognisable on the street and at first enjoys his newfound fame. But this becomes a poisoned chalice when he seeks more serious roles. After a disastrous preview of From Here to Eternity, his role is significantly cut. Things fall apart with Tony, and George becomes engaged to Lenore Lemon, Robin Tunney. Tony is devastated, and fixer Eddie is enraged on her behalf. The second time stream starts immediately after George's death. George's mother, Helen, Lois Smith, arrives in town determined to prove that her estranged son did not take his life. Fictional small-time PI Louis Simo, Adrian Brody, attaches himself to her, seeking a payoff and an enhanced public profile. Louis is also estranged from his young son, who is deeply affected by the death of his hero, Superman. As a PI, Louis has few qualms about taking money from a frustrated husband, Larry Cedar, who is convinced without evidence that his wife is cheating on him. This situation later takes a tragic turn, and Lewis's subsequent guilt drives him on a moral quest to discover the truth of George's death. Along the way, we see Lewis's imagining of the different possible causes of George's death. Both Hollywoodland and our next film, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, insert fictional characters into a real-life murder. And like all this episode's movies, its exploration of a Hollywood crime provides neither truth nor solution. My problem with Hollywoodland is that it tries to have an each-way bet. That'd be okay if it didn't try to keep things ambiguous by editing out some of the evidence from this real-life crime. It acknowledges that there was evidence against suicide, as the firing angle was wrong and the bullet shell was under the body. It also acknowledges that George crashed his car after it was mysteriously drained of brake fluid in the weeks before his death. However, it leaves out that George narrowly escaped death in his car 3 times in that period, which would more strongly contraindicate suicide. The film was initially named Truth, Justice and the American Way, but this title had to be changed due to copyright issues with DC Comics. Its final title, Hollywoodland, is a reference to the original name of the famous Hollywood sign until the end of the 1940s. Ben Affleck was on a run of not terribly good films, such as Daredevil, Julie, which we've reviewed before, and Surviving Christmas. This film gave him a worthy role, and he's good in the part. He had subtle changes to increase his resemblance to George Reeves, like a prosthetic nose. Adrian Brody is handsome, soulful and tough at different times and also does well. Overall, Hollywoodland is a tale of 2 classes in Hollywood, those inside the glamorous dream and the ordinary working class who are not, with Lewis crossing swim lanes. So, Ricardo, was this film super for you?
I didn't know much of the story of George Reeves. I knew that he was the first Superman and that, and that something happened to him. I knew that he died, but I really didn't know much of his story. So I found it really fascinating. I'm going to say it started on
Was this your first time?
Yes.
Oh, it's my second time. But
it started on a beautiful opening shot from above, Los Angeles, and it just kept from the clouds, really, and it comes...
Before we had drones.
That's right, and it just comes down and down right to the car, and it just follows the car going into a driveway. It's really a great shot.
Yeah, and it's like Superman.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's really well made. It's a very well made film. Beautifully photographed. Gorgeous. Performances are all very good. I love the mystery of it all. It doesn't sort of give you any solutions at all, really. I thought it would. I thought it might actually, because I didn't know much about it. I just thought something happened to him. I thought it might offer something which did happen and someone was accused, but none of that really ever happened. It was quite ambiguous.
There were people in George Reeves' real life who remained convinced that it wasn't suicide. So I assume his mother, his agent, who's in the film, the guy who played Jimmy Olsen in the TV series, Jack Larson, who only died, I think, a bit after this film came out, not that long ago, he was always convinced that this was something else. And I'm just ever so slightly uncomfortable with playing with someone's real-life story when there are people who loved him still alive. And I had that same problem with the Tarantino film we're going to talk about.
Yes, right.
It's one thing to play with a historical narrative. It's one thing to make a story up entirely. But to play with real life where people are still around, I'm a bit...
Oh, edgy. Yeah. It's interesting that all 3 of these films have a real narrative of the star that's falling, the star that has not...
Hollywood doesn't sound like a good place to be.
Well, no, but all of them don't really shine a great light on Hollywood. And
there's nothing terribly new here.
Look, let's be honest. Hollywood is a great place. It really is. I love going to LA. I love going to Hollywood. I love going to the film markets. I enjoy that. It's great. It is a land of opportunity. People will take meetings. It is an open place. It really is. But there's a lot of sharks. There's a lot of sharks there. I mean, you've got to be really careful with who you are talking to. And that's one of the things about people talk about LA being this sort of, shallow place that everybody's always like, hi, I'm great. How are you? Yeah, I'm great. Whereas the other side, New York, they'll tell you, I'm feeling shit today. Like it's really it's a different kettle. But LA, they do it because nobody knows who they're going to talk to. Nobody knows who they're talking to. Nobody hardly knows where they're going to go. So they want to make themselves be nice and friendly with everybody. There is a dark side to it. Of course there is. Hollywood is made up of so much money. And where there's money, there's corruption, there's greed, there's crime.
Well, let's say Hollywood perhaps rather than LA. I mean, never been to either place, but I think what comes through for me across these three films is that there are limitations to being a one industry town.
Yeah.
So New York, okay, there are people there in film and television and maybe theatre. There are people who are publishers. There are people who, sell meat, and obviously there are butchers in LA, but Hollywood comes across as being this one industry town. And so a lot of relationships seem to be based on the fact that almost that transactional nature of relationships, because, and I think you're saying that, because it's a place where I might need something from you, but when I don't, it's kind of like the cold shoulder.
Absolutely,
is the sense I get from the films.
Yes. Getting back to Hollywood land, I love the performances. I loved Adrian Brody in the role. I thought he was really good. He's really
very
grounded.
Beautiful, and his expressions.
Yes, he's got great expressions, but he's got dimension to his performance.
Yeah,
he can be so weak in one scene and feel just with his son. I mean, what are those scenes with his son are just. You do, and there's that scene in the schoolyard where the son is sitting there, doesn't want to go with his dad
because his dad's drunk.
But he's not a tough man in that scene. He's wilting.
But that's because this event has happened.
That's right.
That it really, it really stabs him to his moral core.
Yes.
And he realises that he's kind of to blame for part of it.
He's a private investigator that does it for a quick buck, right? So he doesn't really care about the people he's investigating. He does not care in the slightest. He just wants to get a money.
He's slightly guilty, but not to any deep point.
No, but this one he does. And then when it comes to George Reeves's mother, and he says it's not about the money anymore. Like this is he consumes him so much.
But it's interesting because for her, it's not really about her son. It's about the reflected glory of her son being, a great actor.
A great actor, exactly.
Who was in a film with Sinatra, a film with Gable.
Yes.
But then she kind of sells out the memory of her son to get what she wants.
Absolutely, which is, that statue. Oh, look, Ben Affleck was very, very good. I love Diane Lane as well. Let's not discount her.
Right, yep.
I really love Diane Lane. I think she's just wonderful. I love her in everything she does.
She's kind of a low-profile actress, actually. Like, she's been in a lot of stuff. But you could say to someone, who is Paul Newman, or who is Scarlett Johansson or whatever.
Yes.
If you said who is Diane Lane, I think you'd get a lot of blank looks, including from people who see a lot of movies. She's done a lot of really good stuff over a long period of time, but
she has,
particularly in the public imagination.
Oh, look, for me she is, but I can understand what you mean. But I believe, the performances were all wonderful, and Ben Affleck was very good in the role.
Yes.
Yeah, he really was. You could see that he really took that role seriously. And I
say he kind of had to.
He had to, yeah. I mean, what I really loved, there's a scene in there which just echoes, what sort of happened to him when he's Superman to a bunch of kids. He's doing he busts through this. He's doing a show, for kids, and he just busts out and he's Superman. The kids are going crazy.
Like a live show.
Live show, yeah. And then this one kid comes up with a real gun.
Yes.
And says, and
he handles that really quite well.
Well, he becomes Superman in that. So he actually encompassed that role in that moment in real life.
And immediately beforehand, he wasn't taking it at all seriously.
No,
he's drinking out of the back with the stagehands. Who
yes,
yeah.
But he really encompassed it. It was a beautiful scene, handled really well. So look, I find it hard to believe this is.
He wasn't first choice.
Who was first choice
Originally,
for Georgia?
It was people like Joaquin Phoenix, Kyle MacLachlan, Hugh Jackman, Colin Firth, Mark Ruffalo, Dennis Quaid, Viggo Mortensen were all being considered.
Oh, well, I think
I'm not sure who would have done it better.
Ben Affleck looks the part. He really does.
There's a moment when they're showing one of the first film scenes where he's Clark Kent in the office with Jimmy and Lois and then Perry White. He actually really looks like Clark Kent in that 50s TV series. The others look nothing like the other actors that I remember well from my childhood. He looks like George Reeves playing Clark Kent. It's very well done. Yes, very well done.
And all those reenactment scenes are fantastic. They really are. I'm finding it quite bizarre that I couldn't really find this film on any streaming networks at all.
No, I had DVD. What did you do?
I did YouTube. I hired it on YouTube. I rented it. And that was really one of the only places. I think Fetch was another one, but it wasn't on iTunes. It wasn't on any other streaming platform.
Do you want to borrow my DVDs of the old TV series?
The thing is, this is a really good movie. This is better than so many. I mean, Tubi has so many streaming movies on there which are just not great at all. So you got a streaming platforms full of not great films. This is a really good film, and I don't think the title does it justice. No. I think when it came out the same year as Superman Returns, which was the Brandon Routh version. And so, but calling it Hollywoodland doesn't really give you a sense of what it is. It's just Hollywoodland.
Well, it's not going to draw you in because it's Superman.
No, but I think it should have done that. It should have been called
Hollywoodland.
Something that gave you an inkling of to what it was about, because saying Hollywoodland with noir set, it could be anything, you know. So I think they didn't do great with the title. They
tried with the Truth, Justice, and the American Way.
Of course, and that's a great title, but they couldn't have that. But try something else. That Hollywoodland is just, it's just. But anyway.
But I just want to go back and pick up what you were saying a moment ago about the trouble of finding the film.
Yes.
And my philosophy on this. I love DVDs.
Yeah.
And we've had this conversation a few times. One of the reasons I like DVDs is then I know I've got it.
Yeah.
Movies that I try and find, or a TV show I watch on streaming which is suddenly gone and I want to watch it again, that kind of almost ethereal state of programming. I'm not loving that word, but anyway, TV and movies and so on, that are considered either out of copyright or out of public interest, or just, not what they want to focus on, and it's gone.
I think they're bringing in old films and whatnot at the moment, which is on some streaming platforms, which is great for older films. But still, I love still owning a DVD and having it in my hand rather than buying it digitally, because buying it digitally, I can't give that to anybody. I can't lend it to you. You can't do anything with it. I feel like it's not mine.
Yes.
And even though I've paid the same price as an actual physical copy,
that's partly the intent.
It is.
Being very cynical.
Yeah. But look,
coming back to the film.
I just wanted to
point out a couple of things.
Yes.
So it was interesting how both Superman and the PI's son burnt their Superman costume. One on the barbecue, one on the couch.
Yes.
But the son did it out of grief or disgust or disdain.
For George.
Because his hero had died.
Had killed himself and knew that, yeah.
Whereas George Reeves is doing it to celebrate the fact that the show had been cancelled, because he kind of... Because he wanted to move beyond it.
Yeah.
But interesting, you had that echo kind of act.
Yeah.
I want to point out that the historical figure, Eddie Mannix, the studio fixer, played here by Bob Hoskins, is also the central character in Hail Caesar. You know that?
Right.
By Josh Brolin?
Yes, but I haven't seen that.
You haven't seen Hail Caesar?
No.
That's a Hollywood crime. Okay.
Well, I've got it.
2014.
I've actually got a copy of it.
Did I give it to you?
Yes, you did. Yeah, I do have it. But
it's a DVD. It's in your hand.
I know it is, but it was one of the least well-reviewed Coen Brothers films. So I sort of,
It's not a great film, and I was really excited when it came out.
Yes.
From the trailer. And, it's one of those things where the trailer's got the best bits. So it wasn't a great film, but it was still very enjoyable.
Yeah.
And it's got a lovely, visual sensibility to it. And the other thing I just wanted to point out to you is that apparently the house where he died is haunted by his ghost dressed as Superman.
What?
Allegedly.
Wow.
So, don't know if this film could be described as haunting, but what are you going to give it?
Oh, look, I'm giving it a 7 out of 10. Because it's really worth a look. It's beautifully made. The only reason it doesn't sort of go to that sort of next level is that, you're right, it asks a lot of questions and it builds mystery, but then it just sort of,
Mystery kind of falls over.
It does fall over, yeah. And that sort of disappointed me at the end of it. But I loved seeing the story of George Reeves, because it's something I really hadn't.
And you get a sense that actually he was a decent guy, who probably could act.
Absolutely, and he could, but he's got typecast. I mean, it's all about being typecast, and he got very typecast, and people saw him as Superman. That scene from Here to Eternity, when everybody starts sort of going,
Faster than a speeding bullet.
yeah, oh my God, that's Superman up there when he's trying to be a
giggling.
serious actor and giggling, and the studio has just like, let's cut the scenes.
This is a scene.
Yeah, it's a sad scene, but something which happens a lot, being on the cutting room floor.
Well, you would know, I wouldn't.
And what are you going to give it?
I wondered if you were going to forget, actually.
Yes, no.
It's a snap, 7 out of 10.
Yep.
I think you probably liked it more than I did, but this was my second viewing.
Yep.
I remember being very excited when it came out because, Superman, the key figures in pop culture in my, childhood, teen years were DC comic superheroes, so Superman, Batman, Flash, Green Lantern and co., and Doctor Who. And, part of, I think the way I came into the whole thing was through this old TV series on Channel 9 here, I think it was.
Yeah, right.
So, I was very excited about actually finding out the story. I just feel second time around that it's just trying to be a bit too clever to be, it's going to be ambiguous, but, maybe it could have been a bit more historically truthful. But look, it's a very interesting story and it's worth watching.
Definitely worth watching. Give it a go.
So let's move on from Hollywood in the 50s to Hollywood in the late 60s. And Ricardo, why don't you tell us about Tarantino's film Once Upon a Time, ... in Hollywood?
Well, this is quite an exciting moment. Greg finally watches a Quentin Tarantino film. Now, I don't know whether this film will either open up a Tarantino watching spree or be his last Tarantino film. I hope not. Anyway, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is the 9th film from Quentin Tarantino. It is set in 1969 in, of course, Hollywood, where the business is changing. Faded television actor Rick Dalton, Leonardo DiCaprio, is feeling a bit low. He feels washed up. He gained his fame by starring in a 1950s television western, Bounty Law, but he's now struggling to find serious work in Hollywood, so much so that he's even given a hint to go to Italy to star in Italian westerns by American film producer and publicist Martin Schwartz, Al Pacino. He hangs out with his friend, Cliff Booth, Brad Pitt, his easygoing best friend and longtime stunt double. Cliff is a loyal friend with a past of his own. He struggles with finding stunt work, and once he gets another opportunity, blows it again by getting into an altercation with Bruce Lee in a controversial scene which sparked much discussion. Rick lives next door to the filmmaker Roman Polanski, fresh off his success of Rosemary's Baby, and budding actress Sharon Tate, Margot Robbie. These four characters aren't aware that their fates and their very lives are on a collision course with a certain Charles Manson. Remembering that in real life, Sharon Tate was tragically murdered by the Manson cult. When I watched this for the first time, I found it actually quite slow and ponderous. There are many scenes watching Rick Dalton act in television shows that go on for quite a long time. These scenes had me thinking, hey, I'm not watching a Western, I'm not invested in this story, get back to the actual film here. But after watching it again, I actually liked these scenes more. In fact, I liked the film a lot more. I found the scene where Cliff Booth visits the old Bounty Law set where members of the Manson cult are staying beautifully written and actually quite funny. But the end of the film is violent and brutal in its fantasy of what happened that now famous night in Hollywood. Again, this is Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, a fantasy story, which also plays very real with the emotions Rick feels as his star dims significantly. Once again, the cinematography by Robert Richardson is just beautiful on the eye here. He is my favourite cinematographer. Tarantino directs well and is always great with the dialogue, and the performances are all top-notch. You can't really complain in that regard. But as much as I'm beginning to like it, it's my least favourite Tarantino film, and I've seen them all. Not that it's bad, because there really isn't a bad Tarantino film. They are all beautifully produced and fantastic cinema, but it's just my least favourite. I know there's more to talk about here, Greg. What did you think of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood? as your first Tarantino
This is my
film.
favourite Tarantino film. It is also my least favourite Tarantino film because, as you rightly point out, this is my only Tarantino film.
No, yes, it is, yes. But I hope it's not your only one.
Not a fan.
Really?
You said it was slow and ponderous, and that I wrote to myself was, it's a very meandering story.
It is.
And it just kind of ticks along.
Yeah.
But the reason that I didn't like this film was not the reasons that I thought I might not like it, which was violence. The reason that I have not seen any Tarantino films in the past, apart from not being particularly drawn to them, is I have heard that they can be very violent. Particularly, for example, I think there's a baseball bat scene in Inglourious Bastards.
Yes, there is.
And some of the shooting scenes in some of the early films. So I'm just not particularly interested.
Yeah.
But in fact, in terms of violence on screen, this wasn't terrible. It's not good. Wouldn't show it to an impressionable youth. But what I was not liking about it, I kind of alluded to it in our earlier discussion, is that it takes a very real story for people who are still very much alive. So Roman Polanski lost his wife, and we haven't yet said she was about 8 months pregnant. So he lost his unborn son.
Yes.
And they're taking that story and they're turning it into a wish fulfillment fantasy.
That's
fairy
right.
Tale,
yes.
in a way that I really don't like. Now, I think how you view this film will very much depend on if you know anything about the true events of the night. Were you sort of vaguely across them?
Yes, yeah.
Okay,
I am,
me
yeah,
too.
absolutely, yeah.
And so while I found the film very meandering, but enjoyed some of the in-jokes about Hollywood and movie making, and we can talk about those. But I was kind of like, oh yeah, okay, don't understand the fuss about Tarantino, fine. But then on the night in question, when Sharon Tate and the other people in her household that night were brutally murdered, I was getting a rising sense of dread. I didn't know, spoiler alert folks, so just give you a moment to turn it off just in case. What this film does is it actually turns it all around and says that the Manson cult didn't go to Sharon Tate's house and kill them all, including the unborn baby, horribly. In fact, they went to the wrong house next door through a set of circumstances, and they themselves were killed horribly. So I had two problems with this. The first one is that I just really don't like the fact that you're taking a serious, sad, tragic story in the lives of people who are still alive and playing with it. The second film I didn't like, and I'm curious to know if this is, Tarantino in general, I have question marks in my mind about his attitudes towards women.
Right.
So, and it happened twice in the film in particular. Once was, there's a kind of an ongoing little story about Brad Pitt's character, almost connecting with, but not quite, the young female hitchhiker who's from the cult, who leads him to go to that ranch.
Yes.
And there's a shot, I think it's the time he actually picks her up, where she's leaning through the car window talking to him, and the camera's just, I felt like she's being treated like an object. This camera's just sort of gazing up along her, little shorts-clad body.
Yep.
And I thought, there's just something here I'm just a bit uncomfortable with.
But there were those shots were in those sort of films back then. I mean, he really does go to the style. He's all about style.
I can understand that.
Yeah. But if you watch his movies, like Reservoir Dogs is his take on a gangster film, Pulp Fiction novels of the time, and it really is. He does it very well. Then you get to Jackie Brown, blaxploitation cinema, Kill Bill, Asian cinema. Inglourious Bastards, War. I
can't.
It's all style, and even Death Proof is all Vanishing Point and what those classic films. So he does things strategically, and so I wouldn't say it's an attitude towards women for this one because it's a stylistic choice.
I felt uncomfortable, but I can accept that.
Yeah.
But the night in question, there are three people in the Manson cult who are savage. One, by the way, we haven't said yet, was played by Austin Butler, who recently was fantastic in Elvis.
Yes, in Elvis, that's right, yeah.
He has a character called Tex. So Tex's character, as the male of the trio, is savaged by a dog.
Yes.
And a couple of things happen to him, but it's relatively contained violence. But the really visceral violence is reserved for the two women, where Their faces are brutally, pulped into the mantelpiece, where she goes through a glass door with glass sticking out of her face and then gets, completely burnt.
Oh, it's brutal.
Yeah.
Yes.
But it feels like it's kept for the women.
But the women are the ones who were the ones that murdered.
No, there were three of them.
There were three, yeah.
And the man's treatment was relatively...
Oh, come on! That was brutal.
What did you see? What did you see?
Well, it was just the sound of it. Really, it was just quite.
But the visual violence. Felt like.
Oh, I felt the dog was quite brutal.
With nothing else Tarantino to compare with. But it felt uncomfortable that it was saved for the women, if you like. So
yeah, right.
I felt uncomfortable, but what I really felt uncomfortable with was the treatment of a horrific incident to kind of rescue it. And I kind of get it, and I kind of feel uncomfortable with it in the same way I feel a bit uncomfortable with Hollywoodland, but much more so.
Yeah, right. The Bruce Lee scene.
Yep.
I don't know if you've seen a lot of Bruce Lee cinema.
No. I used to watch bits of The Green Hornet.
That's it. But you haven't seen
Fist of Fury. We're back to DC Comics again.
We are. But you haven't seen like Fist of Fury or Big Boss or Enter the Dragon. Come on, we should do. Well, okay, but we should actually do them.
Isn't enough you've taken me to Tarantino and Mulholland Drive? I might add.
No. No, come on. We have to do some Bruce Lee. I mean, some of those films he's made, and he directed Game of Death. I mean,
I'm going to find a genre to drag you through.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. I'll be more than happy for any genre to go through. But Bruce Lee, look, I'm a big Bruce Lee fan. I watched a lot of his movies growing up. I did martial arts growing up.
I know.
It surprised me, that scene. And it did piss me off a little bit, because I was sitting there going, he's, the big American stuntman grabbing the Asian guy and just throwing him, up against the car, just saying, we can do it better, we're okay. But then, you know what? It's once upon a time in Hollywood.
No, apparently he had quite the reputation for getting stuck into the stuntmen.
Yeah, there's talk of that.
Yeah.
There is talk of that. But
his family was very unhappy with the portrayal, yes.
With the portrayal, yeah. I mean, but look, you know what? It's a fantasy, again, on Hollywood. I actually really like Brad Pitt in the film. I really like his role.
Well, you know what? It just occurred to me that this film is a bit like Hollywoodland again, because it's talking about two streams of people, two classes. The people who are, the film stars, successful or not, but in that kind of world. And then the people who, like Brad Pitt, they're out getting cars washed and fixing TV antennas and so on.
Yeah, that's right.
It's kind of like
there's so much. There's a big gap between the top and the elite and the not. I mean, he's a stuntman.
Maybe that's the real Hollywood crime.
But he's a stuntman. Yes,
is the separation of the classes.
Well, absolutely. Well, there we go. I mean, look, here's Leonardo DiCaprio, just Rick Dalton. Really internally just feeling not great about where his career's at. But Liv is still living in the Hollywood Hills, got a fantastic house, living it up. But then you got, Cliff Booth, who's living in a caravan with his dog and
out the back of a drive-in.
At the back of a drive-in, it's Hollywood. But look, I hope that it does prompt you at some point to watch. Well, I think you should be watching Jackie Brown.
Oh, should I?
Yes, you should, because that's very well handled. It's the least violent of the lot of them, and it's beautifully handled.
Has he made a kids' film? If he's doing different genres, isn't it time to do? Maybe you could do a Disney film, a Disney musical by Tarantino.
He'd probably do it very well. Because he's a very good filmmaker. He's a very good filmmaker. I mean, it's Tarantino, and that's why Tarantino is a genre on its own. He knows how to make a film. He really does. And every time you watch a film of Tarantino, and that's why, even though it's the least favorite of mine, when I'm watching a Tarantino film, I'm watching cinema, and just the way he places his shots, the way he places the camera, the way it just feels Tarantino. His dialogue, the way he writes his screenplays, the characters. He's brilliant, in what he does. You know that he's apparently been planning to turn Bounty Law into a TV series? Oh, it'd be great. I don't think I'll be watching it. Let me just say a couple of things that caught my eye on the way through. So there were a lot of, celebrity cameos. So Steve McQueen, Mama Cass, Michelle Phillips. Yes, there is. But I was watching this and thinking, but what's the point? Okay, so you've got Steve McQueen commenting on the relationship between Sharon Tate, Roman Polanski, and her ex-boyfriend, who's also one of the ones killed that night, in real life. And I'm thinking, so what a waste of
Damian Lewis playing Steve McQueen.
Yeah.
And what a waste of, like, Steve McQueen, he's in this film for like a nano moment.
Yes.
To tell you this bit of information, then he's gone. Like, I thought, oh, yeah, I don't know, I felt a bit like...
Well, there's a...
Again, I just kept thinking, what's the point?
But even Al Pacino's character...
I'm rapidly going off Al Pacino, actually.
We have a big, long scene talking about him going, being washed up, going to an Italian cinema and all the rest, but it doesn't go anywhere after that. I mean, he never comes back.
And that's why I kept coming back to that word meandering.
Yes.
Look, I did like the sense of fun. Some of the movie posters, the Italian spaghetti westerns and other things you saw all the way through. I liked the fact that they put DiCaprio in over Steve McQueen in The Great Escape. I like the way they inserted Margot Robbie as Sharon Tate into Dean Martin's The Wrecking Crew, which I can just about remember watching on TV back in the day. I like the fact that I think Romeo and Juliet was one of the movie hoardings, and that of course says to you, Romeo plus Juliet for DiCaprio. When DiCaprio's character was in that FBI TV series, that is a real episode, and he was inserted over someone else. Do you know who the someone else was?
Who was?
It was Burt Reynolds.
Oh, was it?
Burt Reynolds was actually meant to play the Bruce Dern character, the old guy up in the ranch with the cult.
Yes,
but he died.
Yes,
and he got replaced relatively last minute by Burt Reynolds, but I think that was probably intended to be a bit of an in-joke that he's in the film, but he's been replaced in the thing he actually was in.
I actually found Bruce Dern hilarious in that. Yeah, I did. I found him quite funny.
What's the point of this?
Well, there's a lot of that, though, and that's why it's my least favourite, because it doesn't have a lot of direction.
Yeah.
Like, in terms of where it's going. So that's why I found it when I first watched it. I was just going, where are we going here? It just seems like scene upon scene. Those movie scenes do go quite a long time, Even the scene with the little girl, there's the little girl
on the set. Who's apparently based on Jodie Foster.
Oh, right, okay. Well, it just keeps going on and on and on and on and on.
And it doesn't pay off.
And it doesn't, no. And it's just... He does a good job, but that could be cut. So there could have been so much cut to show that he did a good job.
It might have been better as a tighter film.
Yes.
The one thing that I can kind of
understand... It's a bit indulgent. That's what I'm finding.
Yeah. But the one thing I can understand about how he changes the historical truth, even though I'm still very uncomfortable with it, is that the murder at that house was actually a bit of an accident in its own right. That Polanski and Sharon Tate weren't the intended victims. It was the previous tenants of the house... Terry Melcher, who was the only child of Doris Day. He was a record producer who worked with people like the Beach Boys.
Yes.
And they had a falling out about recording Manson. So he went there to kill him.
Yes.
And through historical accident, other people, including...
But that's where they've got... But that's
what he's done.
That's what he's done. He's shifted over. Yeah.
But I still feel like there's a man out there... Like Roman Polanski's got questions over his own morality.
Yes.
Which is why he's not been in America for quite a few decades. But he is a man who went through the unimaginable suffering of losing his wife and his unborn child. And, that's a horrible, horrible... And at least while he's still alive, I just don't think people should be playing with it. I'm sorry.
Yeah, okay.
Maybe making a story of what really happened, but to change it like that...
He does the same sort of thing with Inglourious Bastards.
Is that set in World War II?
Yes, it is.
Is that living memory?
Yeah, well, it's not like now.
That's what it is. I feel like living memory is the determinant for me.
Yeah, it's interesting that they had a little bit of DiCaprio's character, Rick Dalton, playing a Nazi killer and whatnot, which Inglourious Bastards, yeah.
So as your least favourite Tarantino film, where are you going to score it?
Do you know, look, it's filmed beautifully and everything, but I'm giving it a 6 out of 10. I know it feels like I feel it's a bit low, but I don't think, I don't feel like I want to watch this all the time. A lot of other Tarantino films, I want to watch it a lot. So even though it's beautifully filmed and it's a really well-made movie, I just don't find myself going, I'm going to turn on that. I can turn on any Tarantino film and want to watch it, any of them. But this is one which I just go, maybe not. I'd choose another one in a heartbeat. So that's why I'm just going, well, even though it's great, it's nice cinema and it's not beautifully filmed, I can appreciate it. It's still a 6 out of 10 for me.
And where do you think I'll go on this one?
5.
No, actually it's snap. It's 6 out of 10.
Oh, there we go.
I wrote a note to myself, I think it's an amiable, leisurely film, meandering, until its climax. And there's a lot of playful in-jokes along the way. in a very long film, but, there are good moments. But I have that discomfort, and ultimately I'm just not sure what this film is really for. And as my introduction to Tarantino, I can wait.
Yeah, okay. You can say that.
I just did.
But I want you to actually explore at least one other, because I know you actually will probably enjoy that one. It's actually a really good movie.
Well, I'll wait for Tarantino, the musical.
Jackie Brown.
Is it a musical?
No, but it's got great music in it.
We'll see.
Okay, so the next film we're going to discuss...
What's wrong?
Well, is 2001's Mulholland Drive, the David Lynch classic.
Classic.
Go for it, Greg.
Ricardo was very insistent that I provide the overview for this 2001 film, and now I know why.
Yeah, you tell me what it's about. Come on, you tell us.
Coward. Variously described as a dream within the city of dreams, or perhaps many dreams from many dreamers, its plot is not what you could call conventional. Its title is a clue to this story, as Mulholland Drive is apparently a serpentine road along the outskirts of and up to the summit of Hollywood.
Yeah, I went there. Saw the sign.
Was it still Hollywood Land? Because that would have been September 1949.
No, it wasn't.
Okay.
No.
The plot is perhaps best summarised as: two women meet and become friends in Hollywood. Or do they? One of them is a Canadian ingenue, Naomi Watts, breaking into Hollywood, and the other, Laura Harring, is a mysterious amnesiac. Or are they? Meanwhile, an angry young director, Justin Theroux, is trying to get a film made while resisting mobsters who are pressuring him to cast an unknown actress as his lead. Or is he? And are they? Well, you get the drift. Or do you? I found this film incredibly frustrating.
Yeah.
On the one hand, it contains beautiful, memorable scenes.
Oh, yeah.
Naomi Watts is incredible in the role that gave her an international career, playing a wide-eyed innocent arriving in Hollywood. At times, she is luminous in a Grace Kelly kind of way, with her role perhaps as a Hitchcockian heroine emphasised by her classic blonde hairstyle and tailored outfit with pearls that she wears to an audition. This audition is, for me, one of the highlights of the film. At first, you see her giving a perfectly serviceable, if somewhat pedestrian, pre-run of the scene with her friend. Or does she? But then we see the same scene performed at her audition, where she and veteran actor Chad Everett transform it into a breathy, steamy and tight close-up of eroticism. It's a startling revelation of Naomi Watts' ability. Equally filmic is a scene in the mysterious Club Silencio, where Rebecca Del Rio sings Llorando, a Spanish a cappella version of Roy Orbison's Crying. It's a mesmerising, haunting performance and ends with a splendid joke on the viewer. But strong moments do not a strong film make. I spent a lot of its 2.5 hours either deeply irritated or bored. I remember actually texting you halfway through saying, "Are you serious?" about this film. Too often, I felt like I was watching people acting with a capital A, such as Dan, Patrick Fischler, who shares a dream in a diner, or Ed, Vincent Castellanos, who is shot by bumbling assassin Joe, Mark Pellegrino, for a never-again-mentioned Little Black Book. But most of all, I was annoyed by David Lynch's writing. Mulholland Drive was originally shot as a TV pilot on the back of Lynch's success with Twin Peaks. It had an open-ended plot intended to flow into a TV series, but was rejected by TV executives for its non-linear storyline, among other things. Then, French production company Studio Canal came along and offered Lynch $7 million to turn it into a feature film. He did this by writing and then shooting a new third act that brought closure, of a kind, to the story, as well as a sexual relationship between the two lead women. I kept waiting for David Lynch to pull together the different strands of the story, but just when I thought he was drawing things together, he threw it all out the window. His narrative dream jumps are jarring, as they're meant to be, but the Alice in Wonderland excuse of "it was all a dream" and dangling clues about what it all means just didn't cut it for me. It felt like an excuse for trying to resolve a truncated narrative from the original plan for a TV series. Lynch seems to take a perverse enjoyment in dangling traditional mystery elements, an amnesiac, a little black book, different sets of situations that may be interrelated, and then deciding that they're not all that important really and we can move on. He prefers to insert visually striking characters and situations, seemingly for the sake of it. In my experience, this is what made Season 1 of Twin Peaks so delightful, but made Season 2 a mess that I eventually abandoned. Emblematic of this jumbled approach is an elderly couple who share Naomi Watts' flight to Hollywood. Their weird behaviour when they drive away from the airport early in the film and then when they reappear at the end felt forced, and I just didn't get it. So I was fairly dismissive of Mulholland Drive when I watched it a week or so ago. But it's been doing my head in since. I've really been trying to make sense of this film to be able to discuss it. I can't tell you how many times I've rewritten this opening synopsis.
Yeah.
As you know.
Yeah.
I've been asking friends if they've seen it, and they either haven't bothered or they've been universally dismissive. I've been reading and watching different explanations of Mulholland Drive, including one that uses Lynch's 10 enigmatic clues to reveal it as a scathing exposure of Hollywood's casting couch system and the conspiracy of silence around it. Some of these explanations actually do make sense, and I begin to understand why film critic Luke Buckmaster describes this as a film that puzzles viewers but delights critics. Ultimately, my problem with Mulholland Drive is that it isn't kind to the ordinary viewer. It doesn't do enough to lead them through the layers of whatever it is that Lynch is trying to say. And if it is presenting a savage critique of casting couches in this pre-Me Too era, then it's way too subtle, and perhaps as cowardly as Ricardo was in assigning me this film to summarise. And on top of that, I seem to be uncomfortable with all of these films, but I'm very uncomfortable with the degree to which his lead actress's nakedness are on display in 2 naked lesbian scenes. I felt that Lynch was indulging his own fantasies, and ironically, Laura Harring has since commented on how difficult she found those lovemaking scenes to film with her friend, Naomi Watts. Finally, I'm left wondering about how the film ends with an imperative command of silencio. Is this a condemnation of that Hollywood conspiracy of silence? Or is it perhaps that interrogating the film too deeply might reveal that this emperor has no clothes? So, Ricardo, I'm now curious to know what you think of Mulholland Drive. Or am I?
Okay. It's David Lynch. He's no ordinary filmmaker,
No.
and he doesn't really care whether ordinary people get the movie, right?
Yeah.
He has something to say in there. It's art. Film is an art form, and to him, that's what I love about his films, is that they are so different. They are an art form. They are surrealism.
Yeah, but you know
they
what?
are surreal.
Okay, let's two
They are.
things to unpack
Hang on a
there.
minute.
No,
yes.
no, because you'll go on and I'll forget.
Yes,
So
go.
let's respond to those 2 bits first. Twin Peaks, at least season 1.
Television.
So this
Different.
This is meant to be television too, but
Yeah, no, but it's a movie.
No, but it was masterful because it
Yes.
told a story that you could enjoy on one
Yep.
level, which is who killed Laura Palmer, and it gives you an answer at the end as well. The answer is very fantastical,
Yep.
but it makes sense. It holds water in the context of the story. But then there's all this other weird shit basically happening in it in a very stylized kind of way that gives you access to other layers if you choose to be interested in them. But I think it's a much more masterly storytelling. Mm-hmm. You say this is surrealist.
It is.
No, I kind of get it, and I'm not unfamiliar with the ways of surrealism.
Mm-hmm.
So if you talk about Magritte and Dali, which are paintings, they're different things.
Yes.
But you talk about the theatre of people like Jarry, Tadger, Artaud, Ionesco, Beckett, and so on. Now, I vary a bit on some of those, and you can argue they're surrealist artists, whatever you like, but they belong to that same kind of school, and I get it. I don't necessarily get everything. I don't necessarily like it, but it holds together for me.
It did your head in. It did your head in for how long?
But it wouldn't have done my head in if I didn't have to comment on it.
Yeah.
If I just watched it, I would have gone, like a lot of people I spoke to, like...
Well, that's the thing. You can either do that. You can either go, oh, that's it, whatever. I didn't get it, whatever. Or you can just go, well, actually, I love trying to deconstruct it and go, wow, yeah, I've watched it a few times now. So, and every time I'm trying to piece together something else, her winning the jitterbug competition, that whole first sequence when she's coming to Los Angeles.
It opens with a lovely energy with that jitterbug too.
Well, it does, absolutely. But when she comes out with those two old people, and that's classic, like I've come to Hollywood sort of, that's fantasy. That's Hollywood fantasy.
Then they get in the car and kind of like,
even the cinematography is soft like this. But
what were they doing in the car when they drove away?
I don't know. They're there for a reason. I don't know.
That's the first time the film stops making sense.
Yeah, right. And then you got the scene, obviously, with the scared guy in the cafe and all of that, Dan,
and Dan is very close to Diane. In fact, if you take out the letters IE as in that is, it's like there's a lot of wordplay stuff going here.
Yeah.
Aunt Ruth could be untrue.
But there's so many different things there's so many different
so what do you think it's about?
Thoughts. Okay. Look, I think it's about an actress in Hollywood.
Who's the actress?
Naomi Watts, right? She's the lead in there, so it's her story, right? Huh?
She Diane or Betty? Or someone else?
She's Diane.
Okay, cool.
She's Diane.
You know I'm going to grill you on this, don't you? You love this film? You're going to tell me what it means. Look, you're going to tell our loyal audience what this film means.
I think there's a lot of things going on. I think there's hang on. Stop it. There's
I'm not going to stop.
Dream sequence, there's dreams, there's real life, and then there's mental illness.
Which bits are real life?
Well, we don't know, do we? We got to question it. We don't.
Or do we?
But that's the thing. Okay. So the scenes between Betty and Rita are
the amnesiac.
Are a dream.
Yes.
And the real sequences are when she's with Justin Trudeau. Camille is with Justin Trudeau, and she's jealous of
at the party.
Her at the party. And they are real. And I think after that jealousy, she tries to have her killed. And that is where you get the amnesiac stuff at the start, when she has that car crash because they are going to kill her.
And it's part of the dream.
It's part of the... No, hang on a minute. Yeah, hang on.
Car crash
interrupted
by the joyride is part of the dream.
Is it?
Or isn't it?
Or isn't it?
Keep going.
No, because I don't think so.
In the dream explanation of the film, the opening scenes are real until just before the credits when she puts her head down the red pillow and she goes to sleep.
That's right, she goes to sleep.
Everything then is a dream until the opening of the blue box. So everything, all the way through up until through the Club Silencio, and they go back to the house and they open the blue box. The blue box and go, like Betty disappears.
And what's the key?
It's the way you open the box.
Yeah, but what is the blue key? What's the symbol?
It represents something else. Well, it represents two things.
Yeah.
Depending on your interpretation. At least two things, okay? One explanation... God, I'm starting to sound like a fan of the film.
You are.
One explanation is that because the hitman said you'll know when she's being killed because I'll leave a blue key in your apartment.
Yes.
The blue key represents the reality of what she's done.
Yes.
And she opens the box and you leave the dream into the real world. And thereafter, everything is real except maybe the final sequence with the tiny little man, elderly couple, and, and the creature at the back.
But that's her brain. That's her mental illness. That's what it is. Yeah. So
from the opening of the blue box until that last little sequence, that's supposed to be her real life, where she's a very different character. She's not, wide-eyed, ingenue or kind of more sophisticated Grace Kelly kind of character, which comes through more in that audition scene.
Oh God! But let's just talk about that for a second.
No.
That is. Hang on a minute.
That all of that is part of the dream.
Okay. Go. That is. Well, this is the thing. Is it? It's your interpretation.
No. I'm quoting back.
Are you?
And it makes sense to me.
Okay. That audition scene is phenomenal.
It's erotic out of nowhere.
It is. And she is good.
In front, and it's great camera work because it's really nice and tight.
Yes.
Of the two of them.
Yes.
And I was looking at Chad Everett because, Chad Everett's been around. I mean, he's been around for a long, long time. And I wasn't expecting much from him, but the two of them really made it happen. And you forget for a moment there's another half dozen or so people in the room watching them.
Yeah, you do.
All these kind of hangers-on, not quite sure why they're there. And I've seen some stuff that says audition scenes are never like that. And you often don't get to do it opposite another actor.
No, you don't.
You do it with someone who's just reading from the script.
That's true.
Like Rita was doing in the apartment.
Yeah, but this seemed like a bit of a callback, not so much as a...
none of them have met him.
Yeah, none of them met him. Yeah, that's right.
And you know what's also strange
true.
about that scene? They introduce all the people sitting around the room, including Judy, who's the blonde with some relationship to someone, professional in the room. Her face is familiar. She's not listed in the credits. So now you've got this mystery woman playing Judy in the film as well. Unless, of course, it was all a dream.
Yeah, that's right. But this is what I love about Lynch, right? I love his films because they do this.
And the 10 clues?
What are the 10 clues?
I've got them here.
Okay, go for it.
I saved them for you.
But this is what I love about him. And, what I love is... well, look, you know what? He does a beautiful film, but I love The Elephant Man, a very straight story. But
that was him, yeah.
He made a film called The Straight Story about a lawnmower, a guy who drove his lawnmower across America.
Yeah.
And
I know of it.
I love that it's called The Straight Story because it really is. Whereas, Lost Highway, Eraserhead, these films are they're quite brilliant in what they do, and I love watching his films because I think they're watchable.
Until I got too irritated, like I wouldn't have finished it if I didn't have
depends.
to.
I know that he goes really there in Inland Empire. He goes.
You're
really bizarre,
of greater knowledge. But here's David Lynch's 10 clues to unlocking this thriller.
Go for it. What is it?
1. Pay particular attention in the beginning of the film. At least 2 clues are revealed before the credits. I suspect that's probably the jitterbug scene,
yes.
The backstory, and then the hitting the red pillow to go to sleep.
Okay.
Notice appearances of the red lampshade. Now, in the casting couch decomposition of the film, the red lamp implies prostitution, selling your body to get ahead in the film world. Apparently.
Okay.
Number 3.
That actually makes a lot of sense, what you were saying before about that casting couch culture.
It's quite interesting.
In Hollywood.
I'll share the link with you.
And the silence. Yeah. That actually... That has actually made me... That's given me a whole new clue to the film, which is amazing.
Number 3, can you hear the title of the film that Adam Kesher, that's the Justin Theroux director character, is auditioning actresses for? Is it mentioned again? And it's called The Sylvia North Story. I don't know what that means.
No.
Number 4, an accident is a terrible event. Notice the location of the accident. I think that might refer to the fact that it happened at the same place as when Naomi Watts got out of the limo later in the film.
That's right.
That's where the shortcut to the Hollywood party is.
Yes.
Maybe that's important.
And when I was looking at that, I thought when they were just sort of when she got out of the limo after the crash, and then she is suddenly at a Hollywood party.
Because a joyride went wrong.
Yeah, but where she was, it didn't look like really the Hollywood Hills. So that's a long way to walk. And so
this guy who gives the casting couch theory also talks a lot about the geography, like the addresses that are given and that don't actually exist, but where they would be. It's really quite interesting to get composition. Number 5, who gives a key and why? Number 6, notice the robe, the ashtray, and the coffee cup. I know that the ashtray refers to the piano ashtray in Diane's apartment, and the friend who collects it, but then it's back again. There's something about that. Number 7, what is felt, realised and gathered at the Club Silencio. Number 8, did talent alone help Camilla? Which again suggests the casting couch stuff. Number 9, note the occurrences surrounding the man behind Winkies. That's that sort of leap out horror figure who's called the Bum.
Well, they're saying that Rita or Camille pretty much slipped her way.
Yeah. And number 10 is where is Aunt Ruth? Or maybe where is Aunt Truth? Anyway, so in fact, that decomposition around the casting, because the dream sequence story to me is like, okay, but to me, it still felt kind of like Alice in Wonderland. It was all a dream, folks. But if there's something deeper in here, there's almost undoubtedly something deeper going on here. What it is, not entirely sure, but the casting couch explanation to me makes sense.
It actually does. It makes a lot of sense.
Then I would now watch it again. I'd be inclined to watch that decomposition again and then watch the film again to kind of make those links to say, yeah, does that hold together? He talks a lot about the use of the colour red and also a lot about the use of the colour blue. So the blue glowing microphone on the stage at Club Silencio is actually...
Which is a fantastic sequence. It is.
Yes, but that same blue glowing stalk technical thing, is also on the side table with that mysterious dwarf out the back of the business meeting
at the business
area behind
yes,
the curtains.
That's right. Which seems so dark and seedy.
That was with that and the cowboy for me were the most Twin Peaksy kind of moments in the film. Which apparently the cowboy is wearing the for real outfit of Tom Mix, the first big successful Western cowboy star.
Oh, right.
The guy who played that, who's a producer, who's a mate of Lynch's, owns it. Like it's worth thousands, if not millions of dollars. So it's very genuine. But again, it just felt a bit weird to me. But anyway, this guy explains...
The film felt weird.
Ever so slightly. Yeah. Look, we could go on for hours for this. Look, I do not know what else to say, unless you want to try and explain some more to me. But my problem is, if it's a piece of art...
Well, it is.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's not, but, if it's a piece of art, then... But it's released basically as a commercial film, then I think you have to do more, and I think Twin Peaks Season 1 does do this, you have to do more to kind of help people start to get a sense of what it is. If there's a whole undercurrent about the casting couch and its damage on women and on Hollywood in general, it's just way too subtle. And, just playing a game, it's almost like an escape room film. You've got to
unpack the puzzles.
To find
that's
your way
right.
through, basically.
Yes. Yeah.
It's not a bad metaphor what this film is, but I just think...
Well, a lot of people love that.
I know, but a lot escape rooms have fail safes. I've played a few in my time. That, there are puzzles to solve and there's a great sense of accomplishment when you solve it. But if you get a bit stuck, there are nudges. You can either get a clue via the walkie-talkie kind of thing, or you can just decide, look... I want to move on to the next puzzle. A lot of puzzle-based computer games do the same thing. You can skip a puzzle if it's all too hard in some of those hidden object games and so on.
Lynch doesn't do that.
I know, and I think that works for him. It works for delighting the critics, but it leaves a lot of people on the outer who might actually get more out of it. And as I said in my intro, if this is meant to be some sort of savage critique of the casting couch system, it's way too subtle. And I think that then does the topic a disservice.
But that's if it is.
Well, then, okay, we're back to square.
But then we're back to square one.
Back to Alice in Wonderland.
That's right.
Or Patrick Duffy in the shower.
Yeah, and he won't tell you either. He won't tell you what his... No. He won't. And I love that. Absolutely. But there's only one David Lynch, really. There's not many filmmakers are doing that.
Yeah, but look, that is true. And I don't mean that to sound grudging. It kind of sounds grudging in my own ears. But it's not just... a piece of art. He's trying to deliver a message, and I think that message is way too hidden.
Yeah, well, it can be, and it depends on what that is. If it is that casting couch culture and he's delivering that, then but people, like I said earlier, are going to get what they want out of his films, and read them in so many different ways.
You into that next level.
I think there is. I think there's a mystery in it that it makes you just. Question everything's good. I never found it boring. You've got to be kidding me. The film goes very quickly for me.
It's 2.5 hours.
I know it is. Yeah, and it never felt boring.
What we haven't mentioned, I was very, very bored by his 1984 Dune as well. Not having read the books, I haven't seen that. I remember being bored out of my brain with that. I just think if he's trying to communicate something which seems to be the deeper meaning, then take people on the journey. You don't have to tell them everything, but kind of lead them to, this is actually might be about this. I only know because I watched this YouTube thing. Yeah. Assuming it's right.
So what are you going to give this?
Well, I think in the spirit of it being a surrealist film, I'm giving it a goldfish.
I can't put a...
What about you?
No, I'm not. I cannot put a goldfish in what? No, we have to give it a score.
All right. Well, I do have a plan B.
Okay.
My score is by giving 1 mark each for each female Hollywood icon in the film and each Aussie actor.
Are you serious? So,
and I'm not.
You want me to guess that one?
Well, you and the audience, and I'll tell you the answer in.
There's quite a few. There was a few. There's Marcus Graham. There was Melissa George. Obviously, Naomi Watts.
That's 3 so far.
And how many do you have there?
I haven't told you how many. I said there's 1 mark each for female Hollywood icons.
There we go. So there's 3.
And Aussie actors.
No.
It's a puzzle. I don't have to give you all the layers of meaning.
You do.
I've been very Lynchian.
No. That's really annoying.
I know.
It's so annoying.
Or is it?
No. You've got to give a score.
I have.
No, you didn't give a goldfish. I don't want a goldfish.
No, I've given you a numeric score.
3.
If you say so.
Oh, it's so annoying.
My point exactly. What's your score?
I'm not telling you till the end of the season episode. Okay. No, I'm giving it a 7 out of 10.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting how that compares to my score, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's great. It's wonderful. We can really talk about that. Great discussion.
Or is it?
Or is it? Will it make you watch some more Lynch films? I mean, you've seen Blue Velvet.
Blue Velvet I saw when it came out, which is 30-something years
That's
ago,
right.
I think. I really liked it. I found the sort of sex scene quite disturbing.
Oh, it is.
It is, I know. But I enjoyed
Dennis
it.
Hopper's disturbing in that film.
A lot of it. And was that before Twin Peaks, I think, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
Yeah, well and truly. So that would have been... Well, June, I gave up. I was just bored out of my brain. And I'd forgotten that he did Elephant Man, which I really enjoyed. But again, that's a long time ago.
A long time ago. Yeah, it's a long time ago.
So I'll probably go back and watch Elephant Man.
Oh, The Straight Story.
Yeah, I didn't realise that was his. I will probably, at some point, maybe in the not-too-distant future, go back and watch Blue Velvet. Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe one day I'll rewatch season 1 of Twin Peaks and maybe attempt season 2 again. But I will probably watch Mulholland Drive again in the context of that YouTube video. And I think we will post it in the notes.
It actually does warrant a second viewing, third viewing, and it's actually it is very good.
But with a starting point.
Yeah, of course. And even watching it this time, I loved it, and I was trying to read more into it and more into it. But the thing is, the performances are really good.
Many of them. Not all for me. So sometimes I really felt like, either you're being directed to be a bit weird.
Yes.
And I don't think that's the case, the ones I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
I felt like I was watching someone, I'm acting, capital A.
Oh, I never got that.
Well, let me leave you with a final question about this film.
Yeah.
Did you actually notice how many goldfish there were in the film?
No.
No, neither did I.
But I will ask you say one thing to you. Well done on the synopsis. You actually did a very good job with that, and I commend you on it because it's a bloody tough one.
I love it when you're mansplaining.
But I'm a man too. You did research.
Yes.
And you added. And you gave me some ideas of
they're borrowed ideas, but I think they're interesting ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So watch it. It's a bloody worth a watch. This film, I really love it.
And watch out for the goldfish.
So that concludes episode 4 of season 5 of the Filmmaker Film Watcher podcast.
Or does it?
Well, it does. There's no mystery in that.
No, somebody might go back and play it again.
It's ended.
Hopefully.
Yeah, that's right.
But let's say traditionally, yes?
Yes. So next episode, 5...
5 of 5.
5 of 5 is our planes, trains and automobiles episode.
Now, cunningly, we don't actually talk about the film, and I've yet to see the film Planes, Trains and Automobiles.
Yeah.
But we thought it was a nice way of saying, let's do some films about transport.
So the first film we're going to be looking at is... Planes, which is Flying High, the 1980 films, aka Airplane.
Yeah, because it's Flying High here in Australia, but I think... Well, certainly in America, it was Airplane. Britain, I've got no idea. And I've been looking into some of the weird and wonderful names it's had around the world in different language translations.
Yeah.
And then our train
is Buster Keaton's The General from 1926.
And you know how much I love Buster
Keaton. I can't wait to see it because I haven't seen it. So I'm really looking forward to having a look at that.
And automobiles?
Oh, we're looking at a Steven Spielberg classic.
His premiere feature, isn't it?
That's right, yeah. Jewel from 1970.
Yes, which I haven't seen before. Have you seen before?
Yes, okay. But a long time ago, so it's going to be like a bit of a first time for me. I know the gist of it, but so it's going to be a good one.
And with Dennis Weaver, who was really big at the time from the McCloud TV series about the cowboy sheriff in, I think it was New York.
Yeah. Oh, it's going to be great. It's going to be a really fun episode.
It should transport you.
Yeah, and less surreal.
Or is it?